Hey sports fans, got the 1999 Chrysler 300M here. Now, we've done a number of repairs to this car. We put in front brakes, rear brakes, it's a muffler, what else do we have? Wheel sensor, and then the rear trailing arm on it. So we've done a number of things to this car. Today we're going to put on new front tie rod ends on both inner and outer. It was wearing out the tires, and we determined that that's what the problem is. Now, I just want to point out, we've done a number of things to this car. But think of the money we saved by doing it ourselves. This particular job here, I understand you had a service department take care of it. It'd be about $500. The parts we bought to do the job cost about $60. And if nothing goes wrong, we should be able to get this job done easily within one afternoon. Maybe even half of an afternoon. It's probably going to be on the longer side because we live in the Rust Belt, and I expect a lot of the nuts and bolts and things are going to be frozen with rust. But the money savings that we experienced with this car doing the repair ourselves, it's well over $1,000. We'll be saving about $400 some odd on this repair alone. So this car is a perfect example how your car, even though they're an expense, they can also be one of your greatest sources of savings if you do the work yourself. Okay, to do this job, we have to take off the windshield wipers, we have to take off this cowl vent, and then there's a structural piece right here, kind of a stiffener that goes side to side. We have to take that off because the whole ball of wax that we have to deal with, the inner tie rods, is right in that area. So actually, if rust wasn't part of the equation, this would actually be a pretty easy job. But I think we're going to be fighting some rust. Now we're going to take apart these things on the top end here first. Later on, we'll have to jack up the car to take off the inner tie rod ends, or the outer tie rod ends actually. We'll have to jack up the car, but that's just going to make it a little bit harder to work on while we do this other stuff. So we'll get this taken care of, and then we'll jack up the car and take the wheels off at that point. Now the thing about cars is, there's a lot of differences between makes and models and things. It's worth every penny for you to buy the Hayes manual or any other similar type of manual that covers the type of car you're working on. When I first started buying these books, they were about $10. I think they're about $15 now, worth every single penny. The other thing I would suggest to you is watch as many YouTube videos on the subject as you can, not just mine, but particularly mine, but any one of them you can find, because I swear 1 minute spent watching videos will save you at least 2 minutes of shop time, maybe 5, okay? So if you spend 20 minutes watching a video on the subject, you're probably going to cut off at least 40 minutes off your repair. A perfect example is the first thing we have to do is we have to take off this windshield wiper here. Now, if I was just guessing, we pop this button out and there'll be a nut underneath, but I'm not positive. I think I remember that from watching some other videos, but I'm going to look in the manual here to make sure that's the way to do it. All right, here's a perfect example. The manuals aren't always going to tell you. They don't cover everything, which can be kind of frustrating. They didn't cover how to take off this windshield wiper arm, but I did assume that this plastic plug you just pry out with a little screwdriver, and that's what I did. So what I also did, like I've told you before many times, I use an antifreeze jug with the side cut off to hold our parts. Another good thing is a speaker magnet, but in this case that's plastic, so that's not going to hold that. So we're going to go with the antifreeze jug. Now, the other thing I mentioned is watch as many YouTube videos as you can on the subject, because everybody's going to think some other area is important, and cars are different, even within the same model. Like this one, we're in the Rust Belt, so I'm going to have problems with rust. If you watch a video on how to repair a car, and the guy's in California, and you live in Minnesota, you're going to run into all kinds of problems that the guy making that video isn't going to run into. I was watching one, the guy's called the Shave Chief Fix-It Man. He's in Minnesota, and the thing he did is he took the hood off the car, and the same kind of car. I'm going to try not to do that, because when you replace the hood, you got alignment issues. You got to get the exact same place. One thing I might mention, you can scribe lines, reference lines, if you ever want to take off a hood or fender body panel and line them up. Makes it, what Mr. Heavy Chevy does, he drills a hole in before he takes the screws off on a hood or a fender. He'll just drill like a 1/4 inch hole there. And then when it comes time to put the hood in, he just puts that 1/4 inch pin or bolt through there, and that'll line it up automatically, and that's a pretty good idea. I don't want to mess around drilling holes, and I don't want to mess around spending the time to line up the hood. So I'm just going to do this job with the hood on. And it might take longer because I'm not going to have as much room. It might be harder to make a quality video, but that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm always of the school of thought, take as little stuff apart as possible. If you have to take it apart after you fail, you know, well then that's what you have to do. But I always like to try to avoid taking things apart if I don't have to. Now, these windshield wiper arms, I believe what you have to do is you have to put some downward pressure on this side of it while you pry up on that side. So let me see if I can get that done. So I'm going to lift up my thing, and then I'm just going to... And this might actually work better with the hood closed. I'm going to try that. Get this out of the way. Lift up our wiper. Yep, there we go. Closing the hood was the key to that. Look how easy that was. So we're going to take off that one. It'll be the same deal. But you notice how much easier that was with the hood closed. Even taking the nut off would have been easier. So that's something else to keep in mind. I think some of these screws, this has got some screws holding this cowl vent on. We'll have to do some of these with the hood closed, and the rest of them, which are in this area with the hood open. Okay, I got my wipers off, and by the way, there's a 15mm nut holding them on. I know a lot of videos, they'll tell you what every size nut is every time they do a step, and I've been neglecting to do that, but here's the thing, particularly on those brake videos we did, when you're doing brakes, the aftermarket parts will tend to have different size bolt heads than the factory parts, so I don't know how useful it is to report the size of every nut and bolt that you come across. But one thing I thought I'd mention, driver's side windshield wiper, passenger side windshield wiper, the arms are a little bit different. So I'm going to store them in a manner where I can remember which is which, and that's always a good thing. Kind of keep your parts somewhat, you know, lay them out some way that you can identify. You might even want to put a masking tape on it, right, left, right, driver's side, passenger side, or a tag or anything to identify which is which. It'll make putting it together go a little bit faster. They're only going to go one way because one's different than the other, but at least that way you won't waste time putting the wrong one on the wrong side. Okay, I guess I'm going to go for these cowl vent screws next, and those are Torx drive screws, so let me get those out. Alright, we're going to remove these Torx head screws that hold on this cowl vent, and the way I understand it is the ones on this side here under the hood are different. These are long, probably the other ones are short. You want to have some way of remembering that. It's probably smart to label where they came from. I'm not doing it, maybe because I'm not smart. But I also have the advantage is I'm videoing all this, so if I ever have any questions, I can go back to just look at the video. So I'll know where all the screws go. There ought to be some advantage to videoing repairs because it sure slows you down. So, and it takes two guys because one guy's got to be your cameraman. Or you could try and do it by yourself, setting up a tripod, and you never have your shot in frame and you have a poor quality video. So, looks like the shorter ones are going toward the center. Now we'll open it up and we'll take off the other screws that hold on to the plastic cowl vent. Okay, let's see if we got enough of them off to take this vent off. thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this piece of metal. And it looks like it would be pretty easy. But like I said, I was watching the Shade Tree Fix-It man, and he broke these bolts right here. And he looks like the kind of guy he is in his first rodeo. He's done quite a bit of stuff. So I think it was just that he wasn't afraid of having to drill and tap. I don't like to drill and tap unless I absolutely have to. So I don't want to break them off. So we're going to see how things go. All right, the next thing we have to do is take this brace off. And we have to take a few bolts out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then over there we got another 4. So, like I say, I guess it's easy to break these off. It's got a 13 millimeter head on those bolts. I've gone up to a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. And I like using the larger size, all things being equal, going with the relatively larger size ratchet handle. In this case, I'm using a 1/2 inch instead of 3/8. There's less flex in them, and you can kind of feel, at least that's what I think. I can kind of feel what's going on with that bolt a little more instead of the wrench flexing. I feel that I can feel whether the bolt is actually turning or just twisting. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that way. So I like to use the larger drive if possible. Now see, these things, they do feel like they're turning. We do not want to break these off. Okay? They sure feel nice though, they feel good. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to loosen them up a little bit, and then I will spray some penetrating fluid in there, and then I'll turn them back in, just kind of like we did when we were taking off those brackets that held on the rear trailing arm. I'm going to use a mixture of acetone and automatic transmission fluid. This is great stuff. Of course, like I've said before, it kind of takes heating it out of the picture. When you choose to go this route, you're kind of locked in, at least until this stuff evaporates away, and the acetone evaporates away, but it takes a while for the ATF, if ever. So you do have a flammable situation. I must be out right now. I have to fill this up. One other thing too, a lot of times I like to use a socket extension, even if I don't, it is in a situation where I need the reach. I think it's just a nicer way to hold my hand on what I'm doing. So I'll use a short extension quite often, even when I don't necessarily need to have that extra reach. It's just a nicer way to hold on to the wrench. Okay, now I'm gonna screw these out a little further, and I am amazed so far, knock on wood, how nicely these are coming out. So I'm spending extra time. It's going to take me 5-10 minutes longer to remove these bolts than if I just went and did it. But if I had to drill and tap them, that would probably, depending on how many I had, you know, you'll spend an hour or so at that. So we got everything going against us here. We can't really get very much penetrating fluid down in there because it's a blind hole. I don't know. I suppose you could get up in there from underneath if you removed some of that plastic fender lining. Maybe I'll look at that a little closer if I run into some trouble. And you don't really want to have to heat them, because the problem isn't up here on the top of the bolt, it's down where the threads are on the bottom. So yeah, some of that heat would transfer through, but you'd burn off all the paint here, make the car look nasty. You got a lot of heat in your plastic things like this brake fluid reservoir and on the master cylinder, and you got this windshield washer hose. There's all kinds of disadvantages to heating. Okay, that one came out quite easily. The one in the back didn't. So I'm going to spray some more penetrating fluid on it and then screw her back in. Because you can see, this is probably where the actual threads were doing their work. That's where it was in contact with whatever tapped hole there was right there. Probably nothing was going on with these up here. So when you spray penetrating fluid, it'll go right down to the threads and it'll just stop. It won't really get in where there's actually some rust. So we're going to spray this one and we're going to turn this one back down. I know that it's going to make the job take longer, but we don't have to, or hopefully we won't have to drill and tap a broken off bolt. I tell you, the second time taking this off, or screwing this out, is much easier than the first. So our penetrating fluid there is helping. After you've done this long enough repairs, you get to know about how much torque it's going to take to break a bolt. So as long as you stay below that point, you can turn it with confidence. As soon as it starts getting tighter than you think it should be when you're turning it, that's when you got to start getting scared. And since we see, this did hit the whole length of the threads. Now most of that obviously was why we were as it came out, but we did. I sure screwed some into that tapped hole there, which made this easier to take out. Those are supposed to be the hardest two. Those two and the ones on the other side. We still got these ones here. So we'll see how they go for us. So far, so good. Now some people might take these off with an impact wrench. And I guess it doesn't really matter to us whether it takes us 3 or 4 hours to do this job. It's not going to make any difference to us. But I just don't think you have the feel of what's going on with an impact wrench. And you can snap these bolts off before you even know what happened. So we're going to take our time. This does come apart so easily. I am quite amazed. Look at that, quite a long bolt there. These were medium, those were short. Well, let's see how these ones come. These are the other two tough ones. Well, I can't believe the good luck we've had so far. Makes you wonder, you know, when are the demons going to start popping up? When you're ready to rock. All right, we got this piece removed. The windshield washer fluid hose is held on with a clip into this. It comes up to the bottom. And the way these clips work is it's got little ears on this pin that sticks through. So if you squeeze the ears together, that should make it so you can pop the thing through. And this is one of them deals here where if you boogered that up, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But you can see maybe it's got those ridges there. If you just squeeze them with a pair of needle nose pliers, you can usually pop it through the hole. If you break it, it's not the end of the world. The next thing we have to do is we have to take off this air intake ductwork. The screwdriver is too big, and you probably should want to use you're probably going to want to use a nut driver on that kind of stuff anyway. Never send a screwdriver to do a nut driver's job. Maybe is it turning that? Can you see? Okay, so now we're going to take off this duct assembly. And that comes off like that. We're going to have to, that's already pre-broken for us. This hose comes off right here. So I have to take off, I still have to take off this. This hose comes off right here like this. And then it may or may not be easy. Oh, it looks easy enough. Swing that like that. And let's see here. Right down here, this is held on with a rubber plug type deal. We'll see if we can get that. Try this. Got the old carpentry tool on a vehicle. But this should pry up. One way or another, it should pry out of this hole. There we go. See how easy that was? And this comes out like this.